Okay, we're live. Okay.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the end of March meeting of Mahone Bay Town Council. Glad that you are all able to join us this evening. We've got a full council attendance tonight. And we have a couple of folks joining us that are going to be doing presentations. We even have some people in the gallery. Do we have anyone that is going to do a public input session piece? Clerk, do we know?
No, I don't know.
Okay, but we will have the two formal presentations,
I don't know that people aren't planning to speak, but they don't have to tell me ahead of time, so.
okay? Anybody planning to
Well,
speak?
yes, I think, we won't be taking long, but I am planning to speak. You're planning to.
No, me, I'm just here to.
Look
learn.
beautiful.
Okay,
Watch and learn.
okay, that's good. Well, we will begin then by acknowledging that we are gathered again this evening in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral, present, and future territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And tonight we gather with the intent followed by the living peace and friendship treaties, and we do so with respect, cooperation, and coexistence. Council, you have an agenda that was emailed to you. As soon as we call the meeting officially to order, what is your wish with the agenda? Councilor Wilson?
We approve the agenda as circulated.
Thank you. We have a seconder. Councilor Now, moved and seconded on the question. All in favor? Thank you. Let's go to the minutes of the regular council meeting of February the 16th that was included in the package. Councilor Carver?
Move that the minutes of February 16th be accepted as circulated.
Thank you. Councilor Feeney seconds that. You've heard the motion on the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. The minutes are now part of our record. Let's go to item number 3, the public input session. If you would identify yourself and your address.
Yes, I'm Lee Cassidy of 102 Pine Grove Street, Mahone Bay.
Mm-hmm.
And I was to your council meeting last month. And just as an update, I had a meeting with Dylan Hyde and Scott Hoyt on February 7th. Because after the public works were finished, my pipe leading into the dry well from the corner of my property ran constantly for 2 months. Since then, we've had a freeze, so the pipe has stopped running because there's no movement of water underground at all. And as of today, I'm getting water into the dry well from 3 different directions, down the lane, from my neighbor to the right and from my neighbor to the left. So the dry well is pretty well running constantly. I don't know what the situation will be when the ground thaws. I did receive a letter from Dylan, and it does state that at this point, there's no evidence of any water or sewer break. There isn't any evidence because no testing has been done of the water. So I have received some bottles from the Bridgewater Hospital. I will be sending water in for testing as soon as I can. I just have done a report for Scott and for Dylan of the 4 incidences of water entering the corner of my property. 2 of them were due to breaks in the pipes under the lane. That was 2010. 2017, I had another incident, which I met with you on Mary Bean, and 2018, I had another incident. Now, the 2 earlier incidents were pipe breakages under the lane, and the lane was dug up both times and the pipes were replaced. The town was quite prompt in testing the water and finding chlorine in it. The 3rd break I had was time was 2018. There was no chlorine found in the water. Derek was working then. Derek came with an assistant. They tested the water, no chlorine. He told me the dry well was working and he had tested, there were no blockages. Just after he told me that, the plumber from Len's Plumbing came from across the street because my neighbor couldn't flush her toilets. And the plumber said, you know, Derek, the dry well's not working, and I found a blockage right where the lane meets Pine Grove Street. So again, another incident from the town. Now, when these incidents happen, I write them up and I give them to my insurance agent. Because of that, the insurance companies, because these incidents have happened, they've asked me to get an engineer's report. I did my level best to get an engineer's report from Able Engineering. I couldn't get any action out of them. The guy came, he spent 10 minutes with me. I had to persuade him to go up to the top level of the house and go through the house. And then we went into the crawl space. He gave me a report, which is the same that I expected. Rafters need to be sistered. No major problems with the sills. I was planning on redoing the rafters anyways. So no major hassles, but I couldn't get a written report. I phoned the office several times, and finally at the beginning of January, I got hold of a living person. And I said, well, why haven't you sent me a bill? Why haven't you sent me a report? And she said, oh, well, we don't do that because you have to pay extra for a written report. And I said, the guy gave me 5 sentences. And you can't write those up. You want another $150. The original visit was $270. And no, we don't write that up because, you know, we charge another $150. So we haven't given you a bill because we're not done with you yet. So I phoned Better Business Bureau, and Better Business Bureau says, yes, this is common practice. So I phoned Able back and I said, yeah, I contacted Better Business. They said, this is normal practice. Go ahead and please do a report. Didn't hear anything from them. Finally, last Friday, I phoned them and they said, I got a hold of the guy with the inspection. He says, oh, you stick Better Business Bureau on us, so we're not giving you a report. We're not sending you a bill. We're not giving you a report. 3 months later, I'm down to 0 again. So I need this report or I don't have my mortgage. I'm still paying a mortgage, so you need a report. So I'm pretty stressed about the situation. I'm also kind of a little alarmed that when I spoke to Scott and Dylan, and when we were in my crawl spaces, they said, oh yeah, we're planning on doing storm drains next year. Well, I heard the phrase next year in December. So when is it that storm drains are going to happen? Because we're kind of in desperate straits. If you look at my property today, if you looked at my property this morning, I had a stream on the right-hand side, I had a stream on the left-hand side, and I had a stream in the ditch next to the road. It's like I'm on an island. So am I gonna have to wait another year? I mean, I'm not currently in a bad state because the ground's frozen, has been frozen, but I don't know what's gonna happen in the spring. And I'm really worried. This is my only asset. I still haven't got it paid for. And this is causing me huge stress. Huge stress. I'm not blaming people. I'm just saying this is not fun for me. You know?
Thank you, Lee.
Yeah. May I say something? It would be nice to find out if my name is Paulette Charon. I'm at 91 Pine Grove Street. I'm just across the street on the diagonal of the property. And I seem to be the recipient because I had a culvert in the city. That is, the front yard is changing so much for the influx of water. The pavement it has cracked, it has holes in it, and it's all coming from my front yard. And it starts from Heather and Robert Erdl, comes right down, and it's just goes right down from Pine Grove Street, and it's just got it right in front of my front yard, and then it goes into the culvert, and then it goes towards Sean and Beth's property. So I would like to find out when exactly are we planning to do this renovation of better drainage on Pine Grove Street?
Okay,
Because apparently it was supposed to be part of the budget of 2024. I'm just asking because I'm gonna have to do something to stop that water to come in at the front yard. It's really caving in. I mean, I know that infrastructure needs to be changed. I'm not trying to be too demanding, but let's just have a little bit of respect for the land. That's all. And I would be greatly appreciated.
thank you.
It's just a quick and factual
Yes.
comment, but I feel like it would be appropriate when two people are asking. So, when Scott and I say next year, we're stuck in the municipal parlance of the fiscal year. So we're still in 2023 until the end of March, but we did mean 2024 is still when the work on the storm is expected to happen.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
May I ask a
Councillor
question?
Carter.
May I ask a
Yeah.
question, please? Lee, when you describe the water that's around your house, so the various
Yeah.
places, but is there water now in your crawl space?
No, there's water in one corner of the crawl space. The soil is wet, but it's not a major deal.
Right.
It's not like it was before the work was addressed. Like, I think there's been some improvement.
Mhm.
I do not know what it's gonna be like when the ground totally unfreezes,
Mhm.
because I was getting a heavy flow all the time. But if this is groundwater, I'm thrilled to death,
Mhm.
because this is good news for my property, right? I don't want to be right about it being broken pipes.
Mhm.
I want my property to be okay, because I want to live there
Yeah.
in my old age and,
Yeah.
you know, enjoy the
Yeah.
place and enjoy my community. So I desperately hope I'm wrong.
Yeah,
And I'm not after anything. I just want my property to be safe. You
yeah.
know, and I'm not blaming anyone. It happens. But
Mm.
every incident that I recorded with the insurance company, they're now getting antsy with me. But the thing is that everybody on my street is getting the same occurrences. I've been stupid enough to be open with my insurance company. If I kept my mouth shut, I wouldn't be having any problem.
Mhm.
Go figure.
No, because my insurance, they don't know about it.
I have another.
Yes, go ahead.
And Paulette, is the water coming into your foundation or is the water outside in the street?
No, because I've managed to do extended part of it. No, it's what it is, it's just getting closer, closer. It's halfway through from the front yard. It's halfway there now. But it has find its way curve, the natural curve
Mhm.
towards a culvert.
Hmm.
Because the land is tipping that direction, which I'm also forcing it to go that direction. And then it goes to the back. And Sean and I, last year, we cleaned properly the culvert to make sure that it would, because we were getting flooded constantly. I don't know who built, well, I know the story of the land originally was a pretty pond, a swamp, or I would prefer saying pretty pond with wetlands and stuff. So that was before my time. And also I have a property next door that inject water to my side because I have a culvert. In 2007, the land was put on stilt and infield. There was 2 paid employees every day that Wendell would come back from his work and making sure that the land was properly packed and stoned to the height they needed to have. But it was flooding all the neighbors, so they got sued. And for some reason, at that time, my late partner Graham Lethwick and I were living in Hackett's Cove and in between Mahone Bay. And when we came back, we had 2 pipes exude water. And that water exude every day. And I took picture of it today, all the front yard, her side today, I have lots of them. So if you want to see pictures, I can have them with us. But this is gonna be, it's never gonna stop because now the water, I'm sure, comes from Fogo Road underground and it's all coming my way. And going across underneath to Sean and Beth.
And from the top
Yeah.
of.
So it's a continuous.
Yeah, it's a
problem.
continuous loop.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for that information. Let's move on to item 4, the presentations. And we have Kara McCurdy with us. And Kara's with the Department of Natural Resources and Renewables. And she is going to speak with us for the next 10 minutes or so about a wildlife or wildfire risk assessment. So, Kara, welcome.
Thanks for excuse me, thanks for having me, everybody. You can hear me fine?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. And you see the screen?
Yep.
Don't be fooled by the 29 slides. I'm not going through all of that in 10 minutes. So who I am, though, is I work for Natural Resources, but I've also been a volunteer firefighter and a wildland firefighter for the past 30 years. I do everything pretty much with the first response world, from search and rescue right through to public information. And I was the lead investigator for both the Barrington and the Tantallon fires. I'm kind of going to go through, some of the things that you need to know for reducing wildfire risk and making your communities more resilient with wildfire. And the biggest thing is to know how fire spreads. And in the case of both Tantallon and Barrington, it was a lot of fuel type issues, weather for sure. We had roughly 130 millimeters of rain from January right through to April. Only 30 centimeters of snow throughout the winter last season. And then looking at the time of year, we look at that time of year in May, we had a lot of drought conditions, pre-green up, we hadn't the leaves coming out on the trees yet. The grass wasn't quite green. It was really the perfect storm, last season for what could happen. But we have been saying that this is going to happen for quite a few years now. And, knowing what I know about what's going on across Canada, it's certainly not going to get any better. How fire impacts structures. When we look at Porter's Lake fire, for example, in 2008, there are 3 ways that fire can impact a structure. And one is direct flame. So the forest is either too close, the trees burn, and then the structure catches fire. Second is convective radiant heat. So the host, again, is close to the woods, but it only is enough heat to melt the siding or plastics or anything that's close to the forest. And our number one cause that we saw most of within the 2 fires we had here, and has been known for across Canada, is the fire embers traveling in the smoke. When we look at Westwood Hills and the Tantallon fire that happened last season, the initial fire that started was a lower intensity, and we saw more that radiant heat and direct flame contact from how close the structures were to the forest stand, and plus the seasonal fuels, the dry grasses. But when we get into Highland Park, in the middle of that red blob there, it was more fire embers landing. Residents were seeing forearm-sized branches landing in their yard on fire, catching things like grass. Some of it was landing in bark mulch and around their flower beds and things like that. So there's lots of different ways that fire can spread to your structures. Certainly when it comes to any kind of community, I'll call it all natural hazards, be it wildfire, hurricane, wind, flooding, like we were just talking about. There's lots of challenges with first response world, with changes in weather and changes in access or drought, access to the community itself, and having to get into the community to help when there's evacuations going on. Resources, what do we need for that fire? And certainly, during the 2023 fires, we had a lot of fire activity going on within a 3-day period. And it caused a lot of grief and a lack of resources because they were spread so thin. How close the structures are to one another, firefighter safety, and fuels. Biggest thing, though, is how are homes made and the construction of the home. Asphalt metal roofing is the best, what you want to have on your home. Siding, you want either brick, metal, or a log, like a heavy log, because heavy log doesn't burn as readily as like thin slat wood. What is a problem is cedar shake. And with a lot of heritage communities like Mahone Bay, Lunenburg, Halifax, different places like that, the original homes were built out of cedar shake roofing in some cases. And those are what we class as the highest risk for a wildfire. But it's what's around the home within that 1.5 meter of the structure that we are concerned about. Because if there's evergreens or bark mulch or plants that are going to be non-fire resistive, Maybe the gutter wasn't cleaned and there's a lot of debris in it, or like the picture with the roof there's debris on the roof. Now the debris on this roof is actually from the wildfire in Tantallon, but keeping your roof clean also will reduce the risk. Mowing your grass, having kind of rock gardens like in this picture here in Tantallon. This home actually had all 4 homes around it burned to the ground, but this one survived. They had inadvertently done fire smart practices. It had substantial damage to the siding, but because their grass was mowed, they had a good clearance from the forest to their home, and their flower beds contained rock outcrops, and around their foundation there was a 2-foot swath of rock. It helped save that home from catching fire. Simple things that people don't think of is not piling your firewood or construction material near the structure. This home also had all 4 homes around it burned to the ground, and it survived. Same thing. They didn't have any landscape plants within the 0 to 1.5 meters of the structure. They had moved their firewood away from the structure, roughly 10 meters. Their shed was away from the structure. So they had a better chance of survival when it came to wildfire. Shrubs like the one in the picture on the right can cause a problem, but are lower risk because they have leaves. They lose their leaves every year and aren't as big of an issue. When it comes to preparing your home for wildfire, the most important is that immediate zone around the structure. Leaving deck furniture out in high drought conditions. The cushions on the deck can catch fire from fire embers traveling. Bark mulch, decking material, like sometimes the fire embers will go through the crack of the deck and down into the underside. And if there's a lot of material there, then it can catch fire. We also are concerned about how close homes are to one another. And in Spryfield, on the right picture, they were quite spaced apart. So they had a lot of forest stand that caused them issues. Where communities can get involved, though, is getting their community assessed for fire risk. And I'm happy to say Mahone Bay has been. And the highest risk in Mahone Bay is in the Hawthorne Hills, or the Hawthorne Road area up behind the fire hall there. And up by your solar farm where you have your town solar panels. So those areas you're going to want to like create a buffer around the community, or thin trees, promote hardwoods, things that won't catch fire as readily. There is the community assessment. There is putting together a plan and action, which there has been some talk about the items that were set for priorities within that assessment. And then once you, as a council, look at that, you can implement different stages of the plan, and depending on your budget and depending on your need, and go from there. And for some communities, they've applied for a fire smart neighborhood. So this is Chateau Village and Bear River, and they both have become fire smart neighborhoods. As for training, I recommend that council and staff go on firesmartcanada.ca and at least take the Fire Smart 101 training. It gives you a better idea how fire will spread and how it will spread to the structures within your community. Encourage you to get together as a group, work with your EMO, your fire departments, and start to think about evacuation planning, implementing some fire smart practices, encouraging residents to clean up their properties to reduce the risk, and remove any trees within the community that could pose a fire risk. I know the other area we looked at was up by the cemetery and the water treatment facility. They're a little lower risk, but they certainly can be a critical factor in any kind of communication towers or power lines, because we need those things in order to communicate evacuations. So making sure that they're all prepared for fire risk. I'm almost up on time, so I'm not going to go too much further, but other things that we consider is insect damage and hurricane damage trees. And they can become a risk within 3 years of a post-event. But after a while, they become punky rotten and are no longer an issue. With the community risk assessment, we look at everything: access, egress, water supply, critical infrastructure. That's my timer. You know, if there's anything that you guys, I'm going to skip right to the resources at the end here, have questions on, certainly reach out to me or ask me right now, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Council have any questions?
I'm thinking Cherry Lane where we have the senior citizens housing, that's right on very close to a wooded area. Was that one of the areas you checked?
Yes, yeah. So the seniors is kind of behind kind of town hall, isn't it? Not far.
Okay.
And I mean, it's a moderate risk. There's a lot of hardwoods there, so it's not as much of a risk as some of the other areas that we looked at. I'm not sure if the report's been shared with you, the risk assessment.
No, I don't think
No.
so.
Yeah, it's.
It's
Oh, it's in the package.
Okay, just double checking.
CAO.
Yeah, so another question. So you had mentioned about buffers, the possibility of buffers helping to protect some of these higher risk areas. And I was just wondering, you know, is a buffer just a break in the forest, or how would you describe that?
Yeah, it can be a number of things. So it can be a natural fuel break. It can be an area where there's open sand, gravel, grassy area that your community can mow, reduce once a year just to reduce the risk. Bear River First Nation actually created a 15-meter buffer around their entire boundary of their community by harvesting the trees, especially the softwoods. So they have also a high amount of hardwoods in their community. So it wasn't an extreme risk, but what they're worried about is a fire either A, coming into the community or a fire going out. And as a community, they also looked at that buffer as a multi-use. You know, it can be used for emergency access for any other kind of emergencies. They looked at it as a hunting, gathering, fishing type use, or educating youth, elders educating youth, you know, about plant species and different types of wildlife. So there's multiple uses for buffer. The best one is creating a fuel break, and that can become difficult, especially when you have multiple private landowners. So it's not one that's frequently done, but the most important one is the individual home and doing the mitigation around each structure.
And just a quick follow-up, would a wetland area constitute buffer generally, or?
It can, yeah, it can. In cases like seasonal bogs and things like that, it can become difficult. Like in Shelburne County, they have a lot of boggy areas, but those fuels can become very dry in the spring, first before green up. But after that, yeah, it can certainly act as a buffer, because I know there is a small boggy area behind your kind of solar farm there.
Yeah, actually, that same boggy area kind of rings the town. It goes behind the Hawthorne Ridge and the cemetery as well. So that's why I was curious.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the concerns we had from citizens was the end of Fairmont Street. Was that assessed?
What was that?
The end of Fairmont Street?
Can you explain to me where Fairmont is? Which side of town?
Okay, do you know where the Mahone Bay Center is?
Yep.
The old school?
Yep.
Fairmont Street runs up and back up in towards the trail.
Okay. Yes and no. And it depends on the amount of conifers that are in that area and how healthy they are. And I was saying, I think it was to Lauren, that, you know, the biggest thing there is you could also use your trail as a buffer and create kind of a safe space in around that trail. Your biggest thing is, if you're going to do any kind of evacuations, you want to make sure any larger, like comfort centers or places where people will gather for evacuations are certainly fire smarted. Your schools, hospitals, seniors complexes for sure, where you can't evacuate people as quickly. But the other alternative is, if you can't do any kind of fuel mitigation, there are alternatives, you know, other than cleaning up your property, simple like cleaning your gutter, cleaning your roof, mowing your grass and things like that, is getting areas where you can't do that kind of work is putting their sprinklers, and they're from a company called WASP, WASP. And we've ordered a couple of the sets from them and have them at Natural Resources, and they're fairly cheap. They're only $70. They're quick deploy. Residents can put them up on their own home, or you can put them up at certain buildings if you need them. And the fire department could probably look at them. They're like $70 for 2 sprinklers, and they just connect to your garden hose at home.
What are they called again?
WASP, WASP. Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Carter.
Yes, thank you very much. It's a very fascinating topic and so timely. The question I have has to do with a conflicting point of view about deadwood, for example.
Sure.
There's a lot of talk recently about the importance of leaving deadwood and the fallen trees, and not mowing so often or so tightly, in order to foster natural regeneration, insect, life and so on. So that's a pretty big discussion here in Mahone Bay. So how do you resolve those two rather conflicting views about how to manage the woodland?
The good news is you're not alone. Lunenburg is going through the same thing. Deadwood's easy. It's if the tree is being pecked at by woodpeckers or has large holes, there's a pretty good chance it's got more water than it does dry. Leaving logs like that on the ground, certainly we want to promote species and diversity in our forests, and we don't want to take away all the wildlife habitat. So really downed large logs and things like that are not a big issue. And I usually encourage communities to leave those kind of things. It's trees that are being impacted by, like, say, hemlock woolly adelgid, the hemlock trees that are freshly killed by insect. Those are the ones you want to take down, because if they are conifer, they can be a huge fire risk. As for I'll call it growing, not mowing theory. It has more negatives than it does positives. The big thing about not mowing grass is, and I can tell you this, I'm a beekeeper, it doesn't actually promote more bees and more pollination. And mowing your grass actually promotes it, because as you guys know, what happens right after you mow your grass? All those dandelions pop up as quick as you could get them mowed down, because it promotes more growth of the dandelions. So that's one myth we'll throw at the door. But the other ones is your area has an extremely high concentration of tick population. So if we have tall grass, we're going to have a thicker tick population in your area. Second, if you have tall grass in your yard, it's actually not healthy for your landscaped plants that you've purchased. It can promote a lot of fungus and disease in the lower branches of those species of trees, and can kill off all those plants that you spent money on. And of course, the most important is the fire risk, that those seasonal grasses can cause, especially in the spring when we have fast moving fires. And then the last one is your market value for your house. If you're leaving tall grass, it's going to reduce the health of your siding, especially cedar shake, because it'll promote more molds and funguses along those kind of things. So there's lots to consider when it comes to leaving tall grass. Certainly in our parks, provincial parks, we've promoted leaving grass in certain areas just to promote certain species of insects.
Thank you.
Okay, just one quick more question. You had mentioned about storm damage, windfall. I'm a firefighter, so I know how haphazard those are for the firefighters. What do you suggest we do to help promote that this windfall gets cleaned up in a rather speedy way?
That's a tricky one. Talk to Cape Breton. They're going through the same thing. But I guess the biggest thing is, in large areas where you can't control the fuel, like say a private landowner does not want to clean up the windfall, is along your own property or your own town boundary is creating a larger buffer. The second thing is to talk to them about all the different things that windfall can cause. And it goes along the same lines as leaving tall grass. Don't get me wrong, forests used to naturally burn and wind fall and everything else. And there's a lot of good that can come of, change in the forest. And windfall, generally people don't go in there and, walk or hike or do recreational activities. So we find less fire activity in hurricane damaged areas or windfalls. So that's a positive, but where it can be a problem is when we have lightning strikes. So we try to, like in Cape Breton right now, we're trying to encourage homeowners to create a larger buffer around their home. In case that does catch fire, then their home will have a better chance of surviving.
Okay. Thank you, Kara. Appreciate the information.
No problem.
That will be spreading the word as much as we can do in our community. Maybe a note in the springtime mayor's newsletter to kind of raise the awareness level for people. So thank you for your presentation.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me, guys. Have a great night.
Okay, our second presentation. And you'll have to excuse me, sir, I'm going to try and pronounce your name. Babatunde Awoiga. Am I close?
You're spot on.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's good. Spot on.
And you are with the Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and
That's
you've
correct.
been involved in the housing needs assessment that the province recently completed, and you're going to do your presentation on that topic. Please.
So thank you, Mayor and Council, for having us tonight. My colleague Azad Aida is also with me tonight, so we'll be going through the presentation fairly quickly. I know we have about 10 minutes. Do our best to stick to time. So we've all heard about the project, which is the Housing Needs Assessment. And this project was as a result of the Affordable Housing Commission, which was initiated around 2022. And some of the recommendations were part of the things that we're doing right now, collecting data and information and making that available to the municipalities. So we did conduct this with Turner Drake and Partners, and the report was released in October 2023. So kind of context for this is the fact that we know this is the first time we're doing this. The data, there might be some issues with that at the local level because we did use the data that was existing. And there's also the potential for us to improve on this data collection going forward. And we're hoping that at some point we will be reaching out to municipalities to see how best we can improve this data that we used for the needs assessment. So in terms of housing, we know there's been lots of issues around housing, and we noticed that the single driving factor behind this is population, and the population growth in the province has been on the high side. We've got 5% increase in the province, and Mahone Bay also is increasing in terms of its population. I think we've got about 3% growth within the 2 census period that we looked at. And there is also some projection that potentially there could also be an increase of about 8%, say, in the next 5 years. So that's something that we need to be cognizant of. So overall in the province, we know our population is increasing. At the same time, there is pressure on housing. Vacancy rates are really low. There is also the effect of inflation, interest rates, and all of those things factor into where we find ourselves these days with regard to housing. Incomes are not increasing at the same faster pace. And we also know that construction, as much as we want housing to happen fairly quickly, the development doesn't really play out very quickly. It takes a bit of time, maybe a few years. And locally, we know population growth is also on a high side here. We've got households increasing at a much faster rate as well. And vacancy rate is not too bad. I think we're around 5-7% between 2018 and 2021. And we also noticed that the permit rates is also on the high side. I think it's saying we're slightly lower than historical numbers. So hopefully that is something that will also improve. So in looking at the data that we used, we also add the census data results, and I'm going to ask Azad to kind of take us through some of the census results as well as the engagement pieces that we had.
Thank you very much, Tunde. So first of all, in census data, we are going to just compare the core housing need in Mahon Bay. If you looked at the number of household in core housing need is 17% as compared to the province, which is a 10%. And the other thing is in terms of owner and renter, there is the same trend, but core housing need is more pronounced in the renter. That is a 35% instead of owner, which is a 7%. And due to this SARB benefit from the 2016 to 2021, core housing need is decreased almost 23% in Mahon Bay, and overall in province is 16%. So next slide. So in terms of affordability, shelter cost is not is rising faster than the income. And if we can look at the this bar diagram, if we take the household average income is 70,000, so and household can afford 80% of homes sold in 2019, which the household have a 70,000 income, but this fell down to 35% in 2022. So the prices increased almost 86% from 2016 to 2022. And also in terms of renter, 46% household local renter earning below, which can afford a minimum is a 42,000 income. So they are earning below that 42,000 income level. So next slide. So in to ensure that we could hear from a variety of life experiences and needs, we employed two main engagement methods, survey and engagement. So we organized 90 survey engagement session, and because and also additionally 150 employer responses, and in addition we have over 20,000 public survey responses. So there are only just 17 responded from the town of Mahon Bay. So data for all municipality with fewer than 20 responses is not reported publicly to ensure the confidentiality of the individual identities, and as well as to avoid the statistical unreliable result. So we are not going to present any results from the Mahon Bay according to these 70 respondents. Next slide. So in terms of modeling, we use a demographic model, and we have housing demand, supply variable, housing demand variable, and supply variable. In terms of demand, we have a projected population provided by the FTB, and based on that, we calculate the household and the dwelling totals. And in terms of supply, we just get the permanent data start and completion. So based on that, we from last 5-year average, we took the housing supply data. So next. So in terms of current shortage and projected demand for 23-27. So if you look at that, the last column is for the Mahon Bay. So the current shortfall at the end of 2022 year was 25 unit shortfall. So it will grow up to total demand is 50 units till 2027. And annual pace of construction is 10 units per year. So in next 5 years, the 50 unit will also be constructed. So there will be no shortage in 2027. It is projected that in the Mahon Bay, there will be no shortage in it. So if population growth is higher than this projected demand, then household demand would be higher automatically from the supply. So but right now, till 2022, this shortage will be just balanced in the 2027.
Thank you.
I hand it over to Nathan.
So one of the key things that we will be doing going forward is how we can begin to improve the process in terms of our data collection, so that we can ensure that the information we're using for decision making is as perfect as possible, as much as we can make it. So we plan to eventually engage municipalities to see how we can collect some of the data that we think we were not able to get for the analysis, and also ensure that we also collectively come together to discuss what the potential variables are and what the templates might be for us to collect that information. Because we believe that the improvement of this phase is going to be possible with the help of municipalities, with the help of the information that we get at local level. So that's kind of our plan going forward around updates and improving the data collection process. And I want to end on a note that if there are any forms of support that we can provide to ensure that you're able to really use this information for analysis or for planning, for investments, I think that would be something that we would welcome. We also want to ensure that if there are other ideas around local level data collection within the municipality, I think that's something that we're also open to hearing from you. And in any way that you think we can support around, especially around this housing data analysis, I think we're really open to that. Thank you for having us tonight, Mayor and Council.
Thank you for your presentation. Council, questions, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah. Thank you for the presentation. I was just curious, and hopefully I'm not putting words in your mouth. Is my understanding that the department is considering regular data collection, or is it just improving on this route and then we're done with the data collection?
Yeah, I think we're really working on that going forward. We're going to ensure that at least we're able to collect information that helps improve the process, which eventually means that we will be working towards really generating more data and analysis based on whatever we collect. We can't collect the data without really doing the analysis. So,
thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
Well, I find this 17 people who did the survey kind of disappointing. So we really don't know. It's not a big enough picture.
How they feel.
How people really feel about housing. Obviously, some 17 people thought it was important to them.
Yeah.
But in the overall, is it because we're very middle class here in Mahone Bay, or, but, you know, it's never been a big rental town in comparison to Lunenburg and Bridgewater as far as apartment living and whatnot. I just wonder if that would be the reason for the low participation in the survey.
Mm. Any suggestions on how we might increase that participation? Have you experienced other towns where the participation was very low, or?
Yes, I think it's all around creating awareness, because the survey itself wasn't the main thing that led to all of this analysis of shortages that we saw. Those were based on the secondary data that was already existing, CMHC, PBSC, and census. Those were the data sources. So what we used this survey to do is to contextualize whatever numbers that we had. So that's kind of what we used to interpret some of the scenarios or the differences that we may see in some of the municipalities. But I think going forward, part of the things that we can do is to generate more awareness about such survey, because the survey was focused on all Nova Scotians, be it renters or be it homeowners. So we would have been able to get lots of great information from that survey if folks had participated.
Okay. Okay, CAO.
Throw in one more question. So I know mostly you're looking back on previous census periods, but I also know the province has some stated goals around population growth. And I was curious, I don't think this needs assessment work this way, but I've been a part of the JRTA transit modeling process. And in that case, done a lot of scenario modeling. So they would say, like, what would the needs assessment look like if there were 2 million people in Nova Scotia? That type of scenario, because that's what the province is, my understanding, is shooting for. Do you have any comment about whether that, was thought about or maybe would be thought about in the future?
Do you mean like a scenario analysis?
Yeah, just, what would the needs assessment look like for Mahone Bay if the province were going to meet those population targets?
I think those are some of the types of analysis that we could be doing going forward. Just like I said, this is kind of the first time we're doing this. So it's almost like we're still kind of creating the foundation for future analysis in terms of how well we can use this data to do planning. And we've been working with our municipal affairs team to ensure that at least we continue to integrate some of this data analysis that we're doing on the housing needs assessment into some of their work as well. So I'm sure we might get there at some point, but I don't know how quickly we will be able to do that. But I think those are some of the things that we'll continue to do.
I guess just one final question. You're doing these presentations for municipalities. Are you planning to do it for community groups? So part of my, I represent council on the South Shore Housing Action Coalition, and I think there will be lots of interest around that table for a regional picture. This for Lunenburg and Queens County, and to have a deeper, I think there you might have a deeper dive and discussion about the data and what it means and all that kind of stuff. And I was wondering whether you folks are planning to do that kind of.
I think we are open to that as well. So if you have any contacts or folks that are interested, that's something that we can do. Once we have enough lead time, at least we can plan to see what changes we can make to the data to really suit that audience in terms of their needs.
Councillor Kerr.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And I have a question just about the lapse of time from the census data to now. And that we know that things have changed a lot since the last census. And they're much more, they're worse. The housing situation is worse right now. So how can we extrapolate or better understand? I mean, I just assume that our housing situation is much worse than the housing report indicates.
Thank you very much for that question. And we've already done some form of extrapolation in this report as it is right now, but we would continually find ways to update the data as much as we get new releases from sensors or from FTB, which is Finance and Treasury Board. I think they do yearly updates of population numbers. So we can always use that to update the numbers and see where we stand or see where things are in terms of the changes that could have happened over those period of time. So that's something that we will continue to do. So it's part of the reasons why I mentioned earlier that we're looking to engage municipalities and get some of the specifics in terms of the local level data that we did not get in this previous iteration of the report, because we were constrained in terms of what's already existing. most of them were more at the county level, some of the information that we had. So we're looking to really reach out to municipalities now to see how best we can begin to collect some of that information and use it directly so that we can fine tune our reports and analysis.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us tonight and,
Thank you
and
for having
sharing your research with us. And I think everyone around this table certainly is interested to see where the housing initiatives go. And we'll be relying on your data and your interpretations of that to help us make decisions. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. And if there are any further questions, you can reach out to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Bye-bye. Bye.
Okay. Let's go to correspondence. We have two pieces. One on the creation of the Vulnerable Persons Registry, and one is from a citizen about their electrical bill concerns. Councillor Carver?
I just have a question about the letter from the NSFM and whether that information will be forwarded to our Remo office.
Yes, I think it already has been. I think they're already.
You think they have that? Okay.
Okay. What is your wish with the correspondence, Council?
I have a question or two about the letter about the electricity bill concerns. As I said in a former email correspondence, I personally found the letter a little bit ambiguous about how it explained how the billing was going to be applied. This extra charge that sort of came in addition to the previous two increases, then suddenly there's a third increase to the electricity rates. So the sentence that I'm wondering about and whether it could be clarified to the ratepayers is the current bill has been prorated to adjust for any usage before January 1st, and whether it could be explained more clearly. Is it just my brain, or do other people find it vague?
You're looking at me, but I find it very clear because I'm the kind of person who speaks in those terms. So if you want to know, most people would find it clear. Try to ask others what it means. Do you want me to interpret what it means and say, okay, so what it means and whether there's a clearer way to say it is that the billing period is 2 months and the rate changed midway through. So prorated means that a different rate would apply for the first month than with the second month. And we're just saying that that actually was the case.
And a suitable adjustment was made to reflect that?
Yeah, like they were billed at one rate for the
Yes.
first month and a different rate for the second month. And that would be half the people in town because everybody's on a different 2-month billing cycle. So that would have caught half the people in town would have been in that position. The other half would have had a clean break, which would be more dramatic from a bill that had all the previous year's rate and then a new bill that had all the New Year's rates, which would still be a more dramatic increase. So I don't know, maybe we could spell that a little more. Finance people certainly get into our own way of saying things, which seems fair to us, so I'll talk to Ashley.
Perhaps we could do a paragraph for the mayor's newsletter to let people know.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't done anything in the newsletter about the rate increase, and it's now been more than a month, but we can work,
but this-
we can work something in there.
It might be more than one, but we've got someone who's raising.
And actually, you would only now be, if you were in the second billing cycle, you would only now be getting your meter read. We're just doing meter read. So yeah, I'd say it is timely to put something out.
And I hope you
Just in time, because this letter's probably gonna print tomorrow.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Mayor, hearing that, I'd move that we receive and file items 5.1 and 5.2.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? All in favor? Motion's carried. Let's go on to the end of the month staff report to council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it is the big report. I guess I actually felt like I have, as we get closer to the end of the year, less and less to update, which is probably the case because a lot of things have been completed and we've also been having pre-budget conversations. So you've all seen updated status reports with capital elements and everything else. But if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them. I think we got new stats for most of our statistics for that section. Still some disturbing speed stats, I guess, but that's the way it is.
Any questions for the CIO? Councillor Wilson.
One question that puzzles me a little bit, I should know this, but the electrical sales show that our gross margin on electricity is $200,000 a month, give or take. And we're losing about $300,000 a year on the whole file.
Mm-hmm.
So are we chewing up $200,000 a month plus in overheads in the electrical facility? I guess we are, but it just seems.
In the utility.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to look at it on a monthly basis. I think it is, it's easier to look at on an annual basis through the budget, but I will say in the budget, you do get to see what percentage of the utilities costs represent purchase of power, what percent is just running the system, paying staff, and I actually don't off the top of my head know that ratio.
Supplemental?
Well, just a couple of comments. One is, could we change it from NB power to NFP power? And would it be possible to add in the power we're purchasing from the solar facility?
Yes, this is Q2, so I guess we just don't have a Q, but what we do.
That was my final.
Considering NB power's on there, we might want.
We are dealing with Q2 in both water and electricity, which means we're talking with September numbers.
Yeah.
It would seem to me that with the horsepower we've got in town now, we should be able to get December's information by the end of February.
Do we expect to see a number, a rate for the electricity that reflects the addition of the solar? I think we have agreed at one point that we were going to use the NSP number.
Yes, that's what we're doing, but the solar garden came online January 12th, so we would only be showing production in Q4 for the year, but I mean, it's still, the point stands, this is still a quarter behind.
Yeah.
And it's 3 quarters behind in terms of referencing who we're buying the power from, so we'll get on that. I will say, everybody knows how busy the finance department has been, and I think this was just an oversight in the pursuit of completing the audit and everything else. I actually don't think that Ashley's sections were really updated this time, and I didn't ride her too much about it, but we'll make sure they are next time.
Any other questions?
Does this report reflect some of the decision making on Monday? What's the date today? Thursday, Monday evening? It's like we've never left. We've been together for 4 straight days.
The bylaw section's not updated.
Not updated, fair enough, Dylan. But so in the next report, we'll have the prioritization of the bylaws okay, fair enough.
Yeah, Eric took that away, and
Okay.
he's probably already made that change.
I was just looking at some Julys they're not, okay, fair enough, thanks.
Deputy Mayor, look, he's warming up, he's getting.
Yeah, so I guess a couple of questions. One is with regards to any collaboration or work being done with Tina and the McLeod's group in terms of newcomers. There was supposed to be an event.
Yeah,
It
I
was
haven't heard about it, rescheduling of it.
Yeah, and it felt a little bit of a last minute kind of consideration for council because we had a council meeting on that particular night. So I wonder whether
That's a good idea.
this can be more proactiveness on our side or even on their side for that not to be the same case.
I honestly don't think there's that much more that we can do to be proactive. I know Eric reaches out on a regular basis. But we're standing by and we'd love to coordinate and we will continue to coordinate.
Okay. The other piece is the Marina Control Station. And it says there's a report anticipated in March. Maybe my mind is clouded on what we'd agreed on, but I thought we had shelved doing anything. Or Was I wrong?
Is this just about the laundry?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, when we talked to them back in October, we basically said, okay, we understand that you guys have a proposal, how you'd like to do it, and we're gonna like kind of step back from that, but at the same time, I have met with them since to actually provide council with like, here's what they wanna do, are we gonna okay it? And so that's what would be a part of this report in March, a very small part. The report is not mostly about the laundry, it's mostly about all the other marina stuff, and that would just be one point.
Mayor, we did proceed with the application for potential funding to bring up the comfort stations to the minimum accessibility requirements. We made that deadline?
Yes, yeah, we did, I know, yeah, even though the storm caused me to go ahead and submit it before council had a chance to approve it, but we still did submit
Okay,
it.
fair enough.
And we also previously, just so everybody remembers, applied for COA funding that is basically confirmed. I can't, there'll be an announcement someday if we actually get money, but I think that one is good.
Okay, sounds good.
Still doesn't go as far as we would have thought, considering how quickly the costs of renovating buildings has increased over the past few years.
Mayor, are we okay for a motion to accept this?
I think we are.
Fair enough. I move that we accept the staff report for the month of February for information.
Okay, do we have a seconder by the deputy mayor? You've heard the motion on the question. All in favor, motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hyde. Let's go to 6.2, the town hall exterior conservation pricing. Deferred from the 16th.
So this one has, as you say, been on council agenda. Last meeting, we just had so much on our agenda, council elected to move it, so we haven't heard it, so I'll still introduce it. And essentially this now it's been almost monthly that there's been a little back and forth. So just so people recall, we had a request from the Heritage Advisory Committee to apply for a grant to do a heritage assessment before moving ahead with the specific scope of renovations to the outside of the building. And we got that grant and we did that assessment and it came back and the Heritage Advisory has considered it and they generally endorsed those recommendations. And then we went back to the contractor to whom the work had originally been awarded and we got a change order pricing in respect of that. So this report presents that and then just also reiterates the fact that the award was made on 3 facades of the building, the 2 sides and the rear. While the front was not included in that award, we did tell them that we would come back after consideration and determine whether we wanted to proceed with the front. So you're being now presented with essentially the opportunity to do up to all 4 sides, but a minimum of 3. And the scope that's being provided here does not actually have to be increased, but in any case, we're committed to the original scope. So I'm sure that's as clear as mud. Happy to take questions. I guess one last note from Public Works and myself is that, costs have gone up so much. Putting off work that council thinks will need to happen is not likely to result in a reduction in costs. And I think Jonathan's getting tired of being the bearer of bad news to some extent. Every year we push a project off. So I just wanted to offer that as well as consideration. I know we're jockeying between a lot of important projects at this point. And council may wish to refer some of this to budget. So.
Mayor, I'm pretty pleased with how we proceeded. I think, applying for the grant, getting the provincial government support to get a subject matter expert to come in and give some recommendations. I think that was a really wise thing to do. And I think we did receive excellent advice. And thank you, Kelly, for kind of shepherding that along. Look, I think there's got to be synergies if we do the project as one complete project versus breaking up over multiple years. And at these price points, I mean, they're not so far apart that I think that, it makes a lot of sense to defer the front street facing facade. I do think the investment in the street facing facade in response to the recommendation from the HAC and really, to support the overall heritage designation of the building is a good investment. And it's an important thing to do culturally for the building and, and just, I guess, respect for its, for the designation, the plaque that's on the building. So, this is just one opinion, but I'd prefer to see all 4 schedules get approved with the associated change requests. Happy to make that motion or just wait to see what other opinions around the table are, whatever. you
Make the
prefer.
motion if the comments come up on the question. It's,
Mayor, I'd move the council approve the change orders to schedules A, B, C, and B, C, D, and E, and direct staff to make those arrangements for Mid-Valley Construction to proceed with this work.
I'll second the motion.
okay, on the question. Deputy Mayor?
I think I've said this before, and probably just for the sake of repeating the same thing. Spending $250,000 on the facade of the building. We had conversations this morning around raising taxes. Yeah, lowering taxes there so that we don't impact people. And I think we also mentioned that incrementally we also approve things that cause the increase in the cost of our work. And so from that perspective, I feel morally challenging for me to support this, but I know probably I'm too late in sort of this is a ball that started rolling when we decided we were going to stay here and we're going to start doing renovations. So in voting, I'll vote no, but know that I will take it personally if you folks decide to vote the other way. That's just where I'm at.
Intellectually consistent, though. We like that about you. It's an admirable trait.
Councillor Wilson.
As usual, I'll be intellectually inconsistent. Because I was never happy with this project from the day it started, but the train has left the station. And I think, to Dylan's point, if we delay item D, it's $72,000 today, it's more likely to be $150,000 next year, so let's shoot the fact and get it as it is at 240, whatever.
What does 240 gets the entire exterior of the building done?
Yes, with the heritage components included.
Okay.
And interestingly, very close to the original estimate of 230 because we came way below that when we actually went to market.
Okay.
Now, it doesn't solve our Cedar Shake fire risk situation, however, that's another.
Sprinkler.
What the heritage property owners are gonna do with that?
It's all the whole problem.
Did you have a comment, Councillor Longstreth?
No, I feel, this is just a partially done building, it's like. So we can get it completed and have it done with, because as you said, the train left the station and not having it completed, will there be any kind of, I know windows are part of the replacement and whatnot, would there be damage that occurs further to the building because we keep delaying this work and costs us more again? So I would vote in favor just to get the job done.
Did we finish the heating system overhaul / replacement?
No.
So what we ended up doing was identifying a funding source and applying for it. We haven't received it, but it's very likely that we would receive it and carry out that work in the same time frame as the exterior. So everything would be done in 2024.
Okay.
If we don't receive that funding, I can't. Obviously, we'll talk about it.
Councillor now.
Okay, as we know, when we did the other work, all of a sudden we ran into a lot of unknown situations like the electrical and all that type of thing. So we start tearing these windows out and doing work to the facade. What's the chances of us finding more problems that's gonna increase this price even more?
I mean, I guess all I can say, I can't say it's impossible. All I can say is that the contractor is the contractor who has now become very familiar with the building. They've quoted and re-quoted on this job. And Jonathan, in the course of all that, has also become extremely familiar with the building. When he put the budget quote of 230 together, he had a different contractor who were not the one that is doing the work, also come to us and assess the building and come to these conclusions. So I mean, that's three people who would know very well versus arguably in the previous case, not enough people who would have known. Also, the exterior is a little easier to evaluate for unknowns. You know, the biggest issue we ran into was the electrical system in the building in the last project. And that's not the sort of thing we like to run into. But I mean, I can't sit here and guarantee there wouldn't be cost overruns. I just think we've done
Yeah.
as much diligence as would have been
Yeah, I
reasonable.
know we've, done all that, but in my estimation, when they did the other work, the contractor, when he came in to assess it, should have realized to some extent the problem with the electrical, so that he could have included in his initial. That's neither here nor there, it's in the past.
Okay, thank you.
So for what it's worth, everybody around the table knows that I'm committed to, conserving the heritage in the town to the best of our ability, and that as town council, we have an opportunity to provide an example to the town about stewardship of our town's heritage. But even so, I'm kind of gobsmacked by the costs, but we're in for a dollar. If we're in for a dime, we're in for a dollar. The trains left.
Better than a penny at a time.
Or, yes, and the trains left the station, so it's, I certainly will support the motion.
Okay.
I think the final point Mayor would make is that like this appropriation has been in our plans for 2 years. I mean, we had originally budgeted 230 for the whole for the project. I think the fact that we did it in steps and we got some extra expertise to give us some advice, really, I think it puts us in a better place. So, it's not like I guess the point is, it's not like we're coming here in February of 2024 and saying brand new project we haven't been planning for. We've been planning for this for several years. And this is just, I think the cadence of the decision is really around, we're in receipt of all of the subject matter expertise that we waited patiently for. Provincial government, fortunately paid for that. And I think I feel pretty comfortable going to a vote. We'll see, with the deputy mayor's exception noted.
And Councillor Wilson's analogy to the train leaving the station, you can't back that thing up,
Yeah.
right? It's moving.
So just one question, where's the money coming out of? What's funding it?
So this project was originally intended to be, sorry, I'm just looking it up as we're talking, but this project was budgeted, I think, to be paid for. Let me double check before I speak out of turn here.
The capital out of revenue this year, Dylan.
Yeah, we had the three different parts of, because there's the heating system and the parking lot part as well. The exterior was actually borrowing. We did have it down for borrowing originally. Now we'll have the opportunity to reassess in this year's budget. We could kind of figure out if that still seems logical, but I think we were going to package the heating system and renovations to the property here and basically say all of that would add, substantially to the useful life of this property, and so it would be something we could do through borrowing. That being said, borrowing rates have got worse, and we may want to reconsider that. So we'll look at those options when we go into the budget process.
And this is not a new project. It's the final step in one that began some time ago.
Yeah, we didn't borrow for the interior renovation. That was not something we decided to pay for.
Do wish we had before and after photos. Maybe we do. Somewhere. Oh, yeah, okay.
Oh, yes, there's a lot of photos.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. On the question. All in favor? Opposed? Duly noted. Thank you. Okay, let's go to the update on the home charger pilot program.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this has also been 3 years in the making, I suppose, but mostly because we're sort of on the bleeding edge of something and trying to make sure that we apply at an appropriate level of diligence. So at the beginning of the project, I think we were the report gets into this, but we were really looking at two things: incentivizing people to to start purchasing EVs and purchasing the upgraded chargers for those EVs so that the town could potentially use that for, peak shaving, demand side management. What I guess we came to realize as we learned more about it was the data collection and the encouragement of people to purchase are kind of better pursued separately. So that's the conclusion that we've reached is we still have a need for data collection about people's charging habits. It is still something that would be quite valuable to design demand side management and particularly rate structures going forward. But the mechanism that would be best suited to gathering the maximum amount of data would be to tap into the people who are already here, who already have vehicles, who are already charging, who generally have these chargers already. So we ended up kind of coming down where Nova Scotia Power came down, which is a small credit to encourage people to provide their data to us would be a way to create a pilot program for data collection. So this is what Nova Scotia Power did. Separately from that, in terms of encouraging people to purchase a charger that would be compatible with this type of an approach in the future, we expect that the home program relaunch next year would put us in a position to have outside financing linked up for people when they're doing a household renovation, when they're adding heat pumps, if they're also interested in the EV charger or EV charger upgrade, that can be rolled into like a household upgrades financing package, which is from a third party, it's not from the town. So ultimately, in terms of what the town could pay for, we can arrange that program, make it available to people, and then we can use the pilot data collection mechanism to inform a rate structure that would actually incentivize people to use their charger to benefit the grid. And I know this is an arcane subject, but Lauren has given it a lot of thought. So we had an original budget that was established. We didn't end up using it obviously in the year, but we are still suggesting that we do set that budget at $6,000 for the next 2 years and carry out this pilot beginning in April. So that's the recommendation here, but happy to hear questions. I know this origination of this was at the very beginning of this council term.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense to me. You think about the purchasing decision of buying an EV right now, it's, certainly for most of the vehicles, I think, are well over $50,000. And, instead of us, waiting or debating, waiting every day to find out someone who's gonna go out there and make that huge purchase, let's just gather the data from the people who've already made the investment. It strikes me as completely logical in a way to get better information, but get it sooner than later. So instead of waiting for the next year to find 3 or 4 people to sign up, let's just use the people in town who already have the chargers installed. So I think this is pretty smart, Dylan.
Councillor
I just found the answer, never mind.
Okay, Councillor now.
Well, I stated my opposition to this from the beginning, and I just don't see why the taxpayers should be helping out with these EV chargers for people's in their individual homes. I have a safety concern with it because of fires and stuff like that, because there's been a demonstrated lot of fires in EVs. And, I just can't see the taxpayers helping to fund this. Sorry.
Okay. CAO?
So I can't speak to the part about fires because I'm by no means an engineer, but in terms of the first piece about why would this benefit people, if we were on video, it would be a good opportunity to explain why it would, because if it wouldn't, why would we even be considering doing it? So the notion in terms of demand side management, and it's been successfully implemented in the municipal utilities in Summerside and Saint-John Energy, is to essentially bank your renewables when you're overproducing and draw on those renewables at times when demand is high to avoid having to essentially rely on an outside importer who kind of has you over a barrel in those moments when you have to go to them to make up the difference on a really high demand day. So because we're getting more and more renewables on our grid through the solar facility and Ellers's House Wind and possible future expansion of Ellers's House, if we know that we're going to overproduce, battery storage to hold that overproduction and then a way to draw on that at times where we're in high demand will reduce everyone's power costs because everyone in town is paying for that power. So if we're using cheaper power, that we would have had to sell for a relative loss, instead of buying high cost power in those peak moments, which Nova Scotia Power does charge the town more for, we're able to reduce our power costs overall, which reduces the rates that people pay. When you go to the board and you say, what are your rates gonna be? They look at how you're supplying that power. And if you have a successful demand side management program to avoid those costs, they will give you lower rates than otherwise. It's a more sustainable practice. So Summerside and St. John Energy have done this using large scale batteries. But there are many utilities pursuing distributed energy storage through a combination of electric thermal storage at homes and EV batteries as an alternative or a supplement to large scale battery storage. So at this point, I can't say that that type of distributed energy storage will make up a substantial portion of our grid, but the only way we'll really know that is to do this kind of data collection. And we're doing the same type of data collection around electric thermal storage working with Enercan. So we have a home in town and others interested to do this, that type of data collection with thermal energy.
So as a supplemental for that, these chargers will store power in a battery, or are they?
So the
Just
EV
drive.
is, the EV is the battery.
Yeah,
And so the charger is basically the vehicle to grid charger is allowing two-way flow. The single directional smart charger only allows a one-way flow to the battery. But what it would do is instead of having everyone come and plug in their batteries at 6 o'clock when they get home from work, which is peak demand moment, which spikes the community's demand, it would better enable that charging to take place into the evening hours when demand might be low. So the vehicle to grid is potentially the more beneficial in the long term.
so this would control when the power, that charger would come on?
This would only be data collection project, but the rate structure would incentivize the behavior that would have the charger used at times when it would benefit us. And to develop a rate structure suited to our current sources of supply, we do need the data that this type of pilot would collect. So I know it all seems like a lot of work, but what we're trying to do is get the lowest rates for the resident. And this type of work does contribute to that.
Will this allow the system to draw power from the car?
So that's the vehicle to grid charger. So there's two kinds of chargers referenced in the report. The vehicle to grid charger is the one that has the most benefit to the utility because it would allow for the two-way flow.
Yeah.
But even a smart single directional charger can still avoid those
Yeah,
peaks.
like a
But
time
yeah,
of
the
day
vehicle to grid is the
almost,
one that has that potential to work in both directions.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. But as I understand it, in order for any of this stuff to work, we have to have smart meters.
I mean, in order for the long-term system of demand side management, like what they have in St. John or Summerside, yes, we would have to have smart meters, but it is our intention to have smart meters.
I guess, if I may, my problem with this analysis is it's general. It's kind of extremely general, and I don't dispute the notion. First of all, to clear it up with Richard, maybe, they've abandoned the idea, as I understand this, of buying smart meters for private homes. So this means you've already got a meter, we're gonna give you some money so we can find out when you're charging your car.
Exactly.
I'm fine with that. But what I'd like to know a little bit more about is going down the road. The purpose of that is to get, so we understand how we can control when people charge their cars, when they discharge their cars, all that stuff. I would really like to see a financial analysis to see if that makes sense in a town of 1,000 people with maybe 50 electric cars.
So yeah, to make that financial analysis, I think we need two things. We need data on usage and we need data on source of supply. We did apply last year to the Low Carbon Communities Program for the Department of Energy to collect data on source of supply. We didn't get that funding, unfortunately, but we're still working with area to try our best to model that data. But then we still see this as the kind of other side of that. So ultimately what you're saying is exactly where we're trying to get to really understanding if there is a rate structure that can utilize this type of demand side management and storage capacity, distributed storage capacity to result in an impactful lowering of rates. But I don't think that we have the information to reach that conclusion on the information available today. So this is part of getting to what you're looking for, as I understand it.
Councillor Carver.
So if this is a 2-year pilot project, that'll take it into the next council. And then the next stage would be for the next council to make the decisions about where to go from there. Right? So
Yeah.
the only piece that we need to think about is this idea of the 2-year pilot project and paying the current EV owners $50 a month, $50.
It's every 2 months, because we have.
Every 2 months,
2 months.
every billing cycle. For that duration. Six EV owners, and you did quote the actual cost. So I can support that and leave it to the next council to figure out what to do with it.
Yeah, I guess there's no commitment, so we're not making a
Yeah,
commitment.
yeah, and it's data, it's information. Yeah, that can be useful.
Councillor Trini,
I guess the final point is. Like
but not be the final point. I
The,
told you
not
that.
final.
the data is going to inevitably end up in a report, and that report will probably used at conferences, symposiums, presentations by Lauren. And probably it'll be used for many grant applications, and it'll be used for submissions to Efficiency Nova Scotia. And this $12,000 will, I'm sure, in the fullness of time with Lauren's efforts, will pay for itself over and over and over again. So, you know, when you're on the leading edge of municipal, you know, electrical utility decarbonization, these are small investments that they granted. Like, to have someone like Lauren on staff is a real luxury. But as we know for sure, you know, the amount of grant money that we've received from having that function in place that wasn't in place a few years ago has been, you know, 100-fold rate of return for us. So I think I kind of look at this investment in a similar way. Like the data, it's not linear. Like, we're gonna have a linear, pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. But I do think in the fullness of time, when the reports come out and our logos are on the reports and in conjunction with area, I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of goodness that's gonna come out of this.
Our new logo is
Our new logo, our new.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, so I think in terms of value for money, sounds like good value for money. Just had a question around, so the intent is data collection. And I understand Richard's discomfort around the money being given to folks who already would be considered to be well off to a certain extent. If the town was putting in smart meters into these homes, these six homes, would we be able to collect that data from those smart meters to understand? So rather than spend the money on individuals, the smart meters will still be here. Eventually, I'm assuming we'll eventually all go to smart meters. It might take us a while.
So I think, yeah, there's a distinction on the smart charger, smart meter.
Okay.
So a smart meter on a home wouldn't actually, you could correlate, you could say, well, it's indicative of EV charging maybe at a certain time.
Yeah.
But the smart meter on the EV is what's telling you whether the smart charger on the EV is what's telling you whether the EV is drawing power. So they're two separate things. The smart meter is what you would need to apply a rate design, but the extent to which the EV is going to actually impact on the rate design is still dependent on how much charging at what time the EV is. I don't know if that's.
Yeah, I do get it. I think for me, it's just, maybe you can extrapolate. You won't get exactly, you need the homeowner to tell you, right, when they're charging and all that kind of stuff. You probably won't get that, but hopefully maybe you can extrapolate when that charging is happening. Because I'm assuming that a home smart, maybe I'm wrong, a home smart meter should be able to give you some trends when.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, I couldn't tell you how statistically valid it would be, but I guess one thing we do know is we can tell a correlation when people have electrical home heating.
Yeah.
So from our billing data, we can see how people's electrical home heating works, load works. So, to the extent that if it's anything near the magnitude of home heating, which I don't think it's quite there, but it would be noticeable. But yeah, I think the level of data we're looking for to really inform rate design would need us to collect data at the charger level.
Okay.
But to your point, if we actually were involved in the provision of chargers, this was the original view, we could just have a deal where the charger provided us with that data. And that's a common model, except that we're just constrained by the fact that a lot of people already have chargers.
Councillor Wilson.
I'd like to move that council direct staff to begin the data collection portion of the home charger pilot program effective April 1st, 2024, with the funds for the program bracket $12,000 over 2 years, close bracket, to be included in the Grow the Road initiative in the 24-25 budget.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. On the question.
So is it 12,000 over the 2 years, or is it, say, like on here, it says 6,000 over the 2 year period?
It'd be 6,000 per year.
Per year.
Per
That's
two
what I was
years.
thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, let's have a look at the Maritime Municipal Electric Utility Alliance. This is an MOU.
Yes.
That is being
this one
considered?
just kind of exciting news, I think. We've had many years of collaboration with the other utilities. I just referenced Sunnyside and St. John Energy and the examples they often serve to us. They collaborated with us on our EV chargers, got the NRCan funding for that project. They've given us a lot of insight on other areas. And back in the day, way before my time, my understanding is we had a cooperative, which was a structure
MUNS.
intended for
Yeah.
collaboration between different utilities. I don't think it included, as the mayor says, as much of Atlantic Canada, but there were more Nova Scotian utilities at the time. So since there are less Nova Scotian utilities, and because of Summerside has incredible examples of the stuff they're working on, we're really happy to announce that everyone's working so well together. We thought we'd formalize it in a small way with an MOU. And area has signed off on this, but we're looking for support here. I think it's gone through about half of the units that are shown there.
The areas agreed to it on last Friday, but it was with the proviso that it had to come to council.
So I'm happy to make that motion, that council direct the mayor to sign the Maritime Municipal Electrical Utility Alliance Memorandum of Understanding.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Deputy Mayor seconds. You heard the motion on the question, Councillor Vini?
Well, I think the one obvious, missing party in this terrific new initiative is our friends in Lunenburg. And it is disappointing, and I understand that they were certainly encouraged, strongly encouraged on multiple occasions to join. And so it's a bit disappointing that they're not joining, but hopefully in the fullness of time, the benefits of the collaboration will become crystal clear and they can be brought into the fold, because we're a lot stronger when we're all working together.
That's Councillor Feeney's commercial.
So Mayor Myra, come on over, play a little, come over and play.
Okay,
Water is warm in Mahone Bay.
on the question then? All in favor? Motion is carried. Let's go to. Let's go to the next one. I can't, if the print's too small on my screen, I can't see it. Crosswalk improvements. Hearing aids and glasses.
Just ready to move the
Pardon me?
I'm ready to move the council for the crosswalk accessibility improvements project to the budget.
Budget? All right, thank you.
I'll second it.
You've heard the motion on the question. All in favor? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. That along.
Really hoping to get out by 9.
Okay. Let's go to council items, council remuneration committee applications. Clerk, do you want to comment on our application scenario?
I wasn't really involved in.
Oh, it was the deputy CAO, was
I
it?
did the communications for it, but I believe that we've received 3 applications.
I think
And they were all provided. And I believe the TOR calls for 3.
Yes.
And it calls for 3 periods, so we couldn't go ahead until we had 3, and we have 3 now.
Okay.
So this
we
is
get the
looking
list
for a
of
motion for those.
I haven't seen them.
I haven't seen any listed in these, no.
So there was a link this is the one thing, I think Kelly was the one who did, but there is a link in your calendar invite for the meeting, not the
Yes.
same link as your council package invite link. Where you would be able to see the names, but it's a separate link because one of the links is the link
Yeah.
agenda, yeah, it was in the same. If you go to the calendar, we'll be there now.
Councillor Carver?
I have the names.
Oh, good.
Okay.
So I would move that the following people be appointed to the Council Remuneration Review Committee. Kim Saunders. So I'm scrolling through here. David Lesiuk and Colleen O'Neill.
Dave was young.
Second.
You seconded?
Yeah.
Okay. You've heard the motion. On the question. All in favor? Motion's carried.
And thank you to people who put themselves forward. and
Yeah,
volunteered.
it was a hard grind to get people to volunteer for that one. 7.2, Councillor Carver, time limited parking.
Yes, so I gave notice of motion at the January 25th council meeting based on a recommendation from the Policy and Strategy Committee. And so I now make this motion that council direct staff to prepare a report considering options to institute time-limited parking for town-owned parking areas, including enforcement considerations. I'll second it.
Okay, moved and seconded. On the question. This is just the properties that the town owns we're talking about?
And which I assume includes streets.
Streets,
That's what I was gonna
yeah,
ask.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, okay.
Yeah, we only have the ability to impose time limits.
On
places we
public
own.
property,
Yeah.
yeah.
Including, yeah.
Including
streets.
okay.
Well,
Yeah.
is there something new out there? I mean, we've always had the streets, we've always had no parking areas. And our bylaw enforcement officer's been issuing tickets.
Are you wondering what this is
What's
about?
different?
Oh. So, I mean, Penny, you made the motion, but I can certainly speak to what time limited parking is and how it was referenced in the planning process. So essentially, because we've eliminated a lot of requirements for off-street parking for commercial establishments in downtown,
Okay,
that parking is going to need to go to town provided parking on street or in lots. And so we had a discussion about how one way to enable that to happen would be to have only a 90-minute or a 2-hour time limit on some of the parking spaces that the town owns.
mhm.
And thereby people would not take up those spaces, and therefore the merchants who need the flow of people through those spaces would benefit. So it would offset the fact that all of a sudden there's less parking off street, people need to have a place to park to shop. That's what it was intended to do.
So the change then that citizens are going to see is gonna be 1 hour parking during certain hours, or 30-minute parking, or,
Yeah, there's a
2
whole
hour
bunch of
parking.
different scenarios as to how time limited
Yeah.
parking could be
Yeah.
instituted.
okay.
And I guess this report solicits staff to look at those different scenarios. I just wanted to say that we discussed this report coming to the Policy and Strategy Committee meeting for March as opposed to council. The motion doesn't say either, but I just wanted to clarify that that's my expectation. Because if it came to council by March 12th, you could refer it there, but it won't. So in order to get there, I'm just telling you now, it's our intention, unless council directs us to bring it direct to the council, to bring it to Policy and Strategy as we discussed at the previous Policy and Strategy meeting.
Okay. Deputy Mayor, you had a comment?
Yeah, I just had a question around, I think we discussed this on the basis of just the downtown core commercial area, not all town parking, and so wondering whether that's where we should focus on rather than say all.
I just expect that'll come back in the report from staff.
From staff?
And
Yeah, I mean, I think, if you don't mind, because in order to institute this, we'll need to have a policy that we've never had before. Rather than just having one that only speaks to the areas with limitations, it will probably also speak to the rest of the areas, even if it just says that those limitations don't apply. So we would be looking at the whole town, even if we weren't looking at putting this rule in place for the whole town.
And, I would hope that the report might include things like parking meters. As part of the.
So
options.
just
The
options to
yeah.
control the amount of time people park.
Yeah,
Range from simple signage and enforcement to use of zones like in Metro, to use of meters like in Lunenburg. There's pros and cons with all the options, so, you know, I don't want to prejudge what will come down, but we will look at the pros and cons of those options in the report.
and buying chalk to mark the tires.
Yes, I mean, the way you do simple enforcement is you just walk down the street, you mark the tires, you walk down the street again, you know. But what it does mean is that we don't currently have a person on staff during the day doing bylaw enforcement. We should acknowledge this is probably a seasonal concern, but the financial implications will be in this report.
And that zone parking in Metro works like a charm. That's one of the best things they've ever invented.
I'm also not an app person, but that app is an excellent app.
Oh, yeah, it is. And Bridgewater's got it as well, the same program. Okay,
Well, I was just gonna say, we started this conversation around when we were talking the roundabout too. When that conversation came up. And we talked about how people are parking in places, leaving their car all day. And businesses are not getting, and we were talking about some of that timed parking beyond, like down towards Edgewater Street.
okay, thank you for that. On the question. All in favor? Motion's carried. Councillor Carver, you're up again.
Yes, so, volunteer week is coming. And, the town will soon be looking for nominations for the Volunteer of the Year award. And, from time to time, there's been, informal discussions about publishing a list of all the volunteers that have ever been awarded that Volunteer of the Year award, in past years. And it would serve several functions. One is to sort of an ongoing, if you had an ongoing list that was posted on the website, or it's an ongoing recognition of volunteers. It's there, it could stimulate public interest in the whole idea of nominating somebody or in volunteering. And I had another reason why it's useful.
We have a record.
Well, it's a good record, yeah, I mean, it's a
People don't get renominated.
Yeah, and it's a bit of history, that is useful. And I, make a motion that council directs staff to compile a list of all Volunteer of the Year awards that are on record in town files, and that this list be posted on the town website with annual updates.
I'll second that.
Okay. On the question?
Just one comment. I agree with this whole notion. But Tam is always saying how thankful they are volunteers. But that's the only thing we do for volunteers. We don't do anything to recognize volunteers during volunteer week. We nominate the representative, but as far as going and thanking any of the other volunteers who are on committees or whatever, we don't do anything for that. We used to at one time have our little reception.
That's right.
But we don't do any of that anymore.
No.
And I think it's, something we should be, looking at.
Councillor Kerr.
So if we settle this motion, can another councillor make a related motion after this one?
Could give notice of motion for the
Or give
next
notice of
meeting.
motion?
Yeah. Okay, motion's on the table. On the question, all in favor? That motion is carried. Is there another one?
I'd like to give notice of motion that at our next meeting, I will make a motion that we do some sort of recognition for the volunteers within our town.
Good point.
I'll
Okay,
second it.
all right. Motions are just flying tonight.
Those are just a notice.
It's just a notice, we don't need a second.
Seconded.
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah,
It's just a
we
notice.
don't need one, but it's just, we don't need to vote on it either. No, okay.
Oh, notice of motion.
It's a
Notice of motion, all right. Well, thank you for that. Let's go to committee report. South Shore Open Door Association report is there. Anyone have any questions or comments about it? Let's go along to the Climate and Environment Committee draft minutes. There's a number of issues in there.
Yes, so as chair of that committee, I realized that there's a lot of recommendations coming out of the last meeting of the Climate and Environment Committee. And wondered if, rather than trying to deal with them all here tonight, that we refer those to the Policy and Strategy Committee. And whether that might be added to the agenda for the March Policy and Strategy Committee, if that makes sense to people, to try and refer them there, because there's quite a bunch and I'm having trouble making my document move.
At least with that, at that committee meeting, we can get through the edits in a
Yeah.
structured way.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. And really, the strategic plan edits might be perceived as a different opportunity than the three in the main message.
well, it's complicated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very much so.
And they were, all these ideas are submitted in good faith to council. And I think it's important to give them, their, give them due justice.
Yep, so.
For discussion, so
Is that a motion?
as we know, our policy and strategy agendas are packed in the next while, so it would require some. So I guess I'm just looking for some input in the best way to do this, that people have the appetite to have a look at
Make a
it
motion
tonight.
to refer.
Or do people really prefer to refer to the policy and strategy?
Policy and strategy.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. So, all right, so I move that council refer the items arising from this meeting
Climate and environment,
of the Climate and Environment Committee to the March meeting of the Policy and Strategy Committee.
on the question.
Second.
Oh, you're seconding, are you? Okay. I thought they were gonna ask questions of us. Certainly no shortage of issues for the Policy and Strategy Committee. Whoa. Okay, all in favor? Motion's carried.
We're gonna have to be very politic and strategic in managing our time. at that committee.
Let's go to the Heritage Advisory Committee.
Quiet month on the HAC, Mayor, so I think we're on to the next one. On to
Okay.
the,
Thank you.
I did have a question on asset management, kind of in a similar vein to our last conversation about a suggested motion from in the minutes about amending the asset management policy. And I did have some concerns about some of the proposed amendments. And I think I wouldn't mind the opportunity for us to discuss them as a group. I might be off base here, but I guess when I can kind of hear from the horse's mouth about what's intended with some of the policy recommendations, maybe I'll be a little more comfortable, but I'm a little worried about the laws of unintended consequences on the asset management policies. So I prefer, if you wouldn't mind, to defer this item until we had a chance to kind of review the amended policy. Maybe at the policy and strategy session, in April, or if not, in April's probably fine, but if not, maybe just to give us a little more time to go back and forth with some email questions. I know we skipped over this at the last meeting and I just slipped my mind to respond to it until I saw it on the agenda tonight, but I wouldn't break my heart if we just defer this item.
Okay. Councillor Carter, you're gonna comment?
Well, I don't know why we didn't talk about it in more detail at the last council meeting, the questions about the policy, or the terms of reference that they had submitted. I personally didn't think that the actual changes that they had suggested were problematic, but I found other questions that I thought should be considered. And so one thought was to summarize those suggestions and send them back to the asset management committee for to
their
reconsider
consideration?
their terms of reference. So I may have them do the work rather than coming to the
Okay, CAO?
So yeah, I guess, having not been at the last meeting of council where this came and I wasn't able to speak to it, but having been at both asset management committee meetings, I think, the policy says it'll be reviewed annually, which is a task we've given to the committee. And so they did that, and there were two very minor changes.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any harm if council wants to talk more about the policy, but I think the committee, like, these are their recommendations. They don't have other things to consider. I guess their council was giving them like a specific list of stuff, but really I think and maybe it's council who have other things that you would like to consider with the policy, I don't know that it is the committee. And then also, just for clarity, this is the town's asset management policy. It's not the committee's terms of reference. This is committing what the town will do. The committee doesn't do this stuff.
The town's asset management policy.
Yeah.
And
So that, like, when it says,
Asset
for example, the
management,
town will
right.
do this, or the town will, but it's not the committee won't do it. It's staff who do this stuff. Yeah.
perhaps, Councillor Carver, your suggestion that we write in our concerns or our issues to the committee and identify what those problems are perceived to be.
Or even
Well, now I'm having second thoughts about sending it back, having that reinforced that it's the town policy. Of course, I was thinking of it as terms of reference.
Yeah.
But so it does make more sense for it to go to a policy and strategy committee, although I regret doing that because we know that the bases are loaded and they.
Somebody make a motion. We'll find out if there's any interest.
Well,
I'm happy to make that motion. I think that would be 20 minutes well spent.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Deputy Mayor seconds? You heard the motion on the question. All in favor?
And I sent an email with some of the suggested changes and I'll send it again before
Okay.
the policy and strategy committees.
All right.
Suzanne.
Audit and Finance Committee draft minutes.
So there is another motion in the asset management.
Where?
This has to do with the facilitated workshop. Well, I don't, but nobody
Oh.
said that. That's fine. If the intention was to refer the whole minutes
Yes.
to the policy and strategy committee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we had some back and forth on that particular item the last time.
And they changed the motion after extensive conversation with the mayor, but it still may be that council has questions or wants to discuss it further. I don't know what Kelly wrote, but because all the discussion was about the policy, I thought we were referring to policy and strategy. But I guess this is actually more like C&E, we'll just refer the entire minutes to policy and strategy. And so we'll have both of those committee sets of minutes on policy and strategy.
Okay.
And the only thing I'll say is this one kind of is a little bit more time sensitive because the reason that they're suggesting the committee, the cross committee conversation is that all of these committees are now working individually on this subject and not necessarily in alignment. So that's just for council's consideration. You might have 3 committees making their own plans that don't entirely align.
With everybody, that's right. And that's what was driving this from the outset.
But I think they all have the best of intentions. I mean, all the community members on all 3 of these committees are just trying to do their best.
Okay, Audit and Finance Committee, there's nothing in their minutes in terms of necessary action. There are no motions. Does anyone have any comments or questions on that?
No, but excuse me, what did we do with that last week?
We voted to send it to policy and strategy.
You don't know if the vote actually.
Not that one, the joint meeting,
Well, so what we clarified was that the vote on the, we were gonna sort of retroactively interpret the vote on referring the policy and strategy as a vote to refer the minutes. The whole report.
So the whole thing
So
goes
the
there.
both of those motions would be discussed.
Thank you.
We didn't vote on that?
Well, I mean, we said after it had been voted on, we're going to take this to have applied to both things. I just wanna make sure everybody's.
How many people meant that? See, voted on.
That's good.
We're gonna send the whole thing.
We're fine.
Okay. Okay, Audit and Finance Committee? Nada? Anything new on our new auditors, their progress?
Nothing new since the audit and finance
Okay.
committee.
Good. And finally, 8.6, the Community Logo Development Steering Team, the
Yes,
draft minutes.
yes, I will report on that. You all received what the final choice of the steering committee was for a logo. We've spent a little over a year coming up with this. We've done public consultation and surveys, and we did our best to go on the recommendations of the citizens. And I'd like to note that we had a very good committee, committed committee. And we had 3 professional people who do
Designers.
graphic designs and rebranding and whatnot as their careers. So we had top-notch people around the table. And I would say it was very much citizen-led committee, more so than most committees I attend, which is good. That's what I felt was coming from the community, that they wanted more input into this process. So I am going to ask that council adopt the proposed logo from Ross Graphics as the new logo for the town of Mahone Bay.
That's a motion,
Yes.
and you're second. Okay, you've heard the motion, moved and seconded. All in favor?
Oh, wait, I'm putting up my hand to make a comment.
Oh, okay.
I would like to say that I would like to support the community inspired logo, but I can't support the motion tonight. I do have strong feelings personally, and I know that people in the community also do have feelings about having the town represented by an image of 3 Christian churches. So for that reason, I do feel it's important to at least have that voice represented in the vote tonight. And I'm a little sad to see the rather jaunty current logo, the one that people call the 3 diamonds. I'm sort of sad to see that one go. I think it served the town well, even though I disliked it intensely at the very beginning. I came to like it quite a lot, so won't support the motion tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Carver, for that. Deputy Mayor.
So, thank you. But as a counter, I love this logo. As a counter, I love this logo. Because it represents what Mahone Bay is about.
Because
it represents what Mahone Bay is about, and we ask the citizens to participate and give us something that they would say yes to, and I think just only in the spirit of what they wanted. Now they have the logo, so.
Okay, on the question, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Well, that concludes we have no new business. That concludes our agenda before we go into a closed session. Colin?
Have a good night.
Thank you for joining us. Good to see you.
No questions. No, I, no questions. No. Appreciate
Keep
it.
posting
We'll
your
see you
dog,
on
photos.
See you on March 8th. Yes, same to you guys. Close door literally like.
Yes, please. Okay, entertain a motion to go in camera? No? Oh, at home. That's right.
5 watching and no questions.
Forgot all about them. Hello, 5 at home.
You want to make the motion to go on camera and then I'll close down the YouTube.
Okay, Deputy Mayor makes it. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Now, all in favor? Motion's carried. Let's take 5 minutes for a